5 years ago, a man looked me dead in the eye, tossed an empty ring box onto my chipped kitchen counter, and told me that I was nothing more than an anchor dragging down his ambitions. He walked out the door with 3 designer suitcases, leaving me alone with $320,000 of non-refundable debt for an ultra-luxury wedding that was never going to happen. Last night, in a grand ballroom glowing with crystal chandeliers, that exact same man stood by my table, mocked the simple black dress I was wearing, and tried to bid $4 million on an antique diamond necklace just to humiliate me in front of high society. He had no idea that the credit machine was not malfunctioning. He had no idea that the system showed his cards blocked for a very specific reason. And he had no idea that the woman sitting across from him was the managing director of the private credit fund that had quietly bought out all his debt, foreclosed on his lakefront mansion, and signed the seizure orders on his bank accounts less than 30 minutes before the auction even began. If you have ever been abandoned, humiliated, or used by someone who thought you were weak, take a deep breath and listen closely. Because this is the true story of how patient, silent work in the dark will always outlast loud arrogance in the light. My name is Clara Vance. For 6 long years, I believed that I was building an empire alongside a man named Julian Sterling. When I first met Julian in our mid-20s, he was charismatic, tall, impeccably dressed, and constantly talking about the grand architectural firm he was building. To anyone looking from the outside, Julian seemed like a prodigy on the verge of massive global success. He talked about multi-million-dollar contracts, international design awards, and high-profile clients in New York, London, and Dubai. I was completely different. I was quiet, analytical, and grounded. I worked as a senior risk and forensic analyst at a commercial debt firm in downtown Chicago. My daily work revolved around reviewing bank ledgers, auditing balance sheets, finding hidden corporate assets, and calculating the exact legal risks of high-dollar loans. While Julian spent thousands of dollars on tailored Italian suits, high-end dinners, and luxury office furniture to project the image of a wealthy visionary, I was the one quietly managing the real world for him. I helped him organize his corporate filings. I reviewed his subcontractor agreements late into the night. I tried to warn him when his operating expenses were getting completely out of hand. Every time I tried to talk to him about financial discipline, Julian would wave his hand dismissively and laugh. He would tell me that I had an employee mindset. He would say that visionaries do not count pennies and that to attract serious money, you have to look like you already have millions in the bank. I loved him, and because I loved him, I allowed myself to be blinded. When he took me to a rooftop overlooking the Chicago skyline and asked me to marry him, I said yes without hesitation. That engagement marked the beginning of my financial destruction. Julian refused to have a simple, elegant wedding. He insisted that the wedding was a business branding event for his firm. He booked the Grand Historic Botanical Conservatory. He hired an internationally celebrated floral team. He insisted on booking a Michelin-starred catering service for 400 prominent guests. Whenever the massive security deposits were due, Julian always had an excuse. He would tell me that his primary investor was finalizing an overseas wire transfer. He would say his funds were temporarily tied up in escrow. He would wrap his arms around me, kiss my forehead, and ask me to co-sign the venue contracts and put my personal life savings down as collateral just to bridge the gap. He promised me on his word that the moment his major development project cleared in the spring, he would wire double the balance directly back into my accounts. I believed him. I drained my emergency fund. I liquidated my investment portfolios. I took out high-interest personal loans to cover the florist, the caterers, and the production team. I signed every secondary liability clause because I believed we were becoming husband and wife. 2 weeks before the wedding ceremony, the balance was fully locked in. The bills amounted to $320,000. That was the night Julian packed his bags, cleaned out the remaining funds in our joint account, and walked out while I was at the grocery store. On the kitchen island, he left a cold, short letter. He wrote that while I was a safe and dependable woman, I was fundamentally ordinary. He said a man of his stature needed a partner who opened doors to international high society, not a corporate auditor who worried about monthly interest rates. He told me that he had met Chloe Thorne, the 22-year-old heiress to a massive Midwest shipping and logistics empire, and that they were moving to an exclusive estate together. He told me not to contact him and that his attorneys would handle the rest. When the wedding was canceled, the vendors and the venue did not chase Julian. Julian's name was shielded by shell corporations with zero liquid capital. My name, however, was written in black ink across the secondary personal liability agreements. Within 30 days, collection notices flooded my mailbox. The catering company threatened immediate civil litigation. The venue turned my file over to an aggressive collection agency. I had to sell my car for cash. I gave up the lease on our shared apartment and moved into a drafty 400-square-foot studio directly above a commercial laundromat on the edge of the city. I slept on a single mattress on the floor. For nearly 8 months, my dinners consisted of dry oatmeal, canned beans, and tap water. I remember sitting on the cold floor during the freezing Chicago winter, wrapping my frozen hands around a mug of hot water just to stop shaking, listening to the heavy industrial dryers vibrating the wooden floorboards beneath me. My credit score was decimated. My pride was shattered. Right there in the dark of that tiny room, surrounded by red debt notices, something broke inside me. But along with that break, an immense, cold clarity took its place. The naive girl who prioritized everyone else's happiness over her own reality was gone. I made a silent vow to myself. I would not declare bankruptcy. Declaring bankruptcy would permanently blacklist me from holding executive licensing in high-level institutional finance. Instead, I went directly to the managing partners at my firm, laid out my financial situation without sugarcoating a single detail, and asked to be transferred into the most brutal high-stakes division in the company: distressed asset recovery and commercial liquidation. Commercial debt recovery at that level is not about making polite phone calls. It is about hunting down toxic corporate debtors, wealthy individuals who borrow tens of millions of dollars through complex legal mazes, default on their loans, and continue living in luxury while leaving everyday vendors and creditors with the bill. I threw my entire existence into that work. I worked 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. I learned how to track foreign bank accounts in Panama and the Cayman Islands. I learned how to pierce corporate veils in Delaware and Wyoming. I audited maritime registries, private aircraft ownerships, and fraudulent trust agreements. Every single penny of bonus and recovery commission I earned went straight into paying off the $320,000 Julian had dumped on my life. By the end of my second year, the entire debt was paid off. By the end of my third year, I was promoted to Vice President of Asset Recovery. By the end of my fourth year, our firm was acquired by Meridian Sovereign Capital, a multi-billion-dollar private credit fund that buys defaulted megaloans from major commercial banks and enforces court-ordered asset seizures. I was appointed managing director of the entire Midwest division. I did not spend my money on luxury clothes, exotic vacations, or flashy cars. I drove a reliable, unassuming sedan. I wore classic tailored wool suits with zero visible designer logos. I kept my personal life completely private. Meanwhile, Julian was living out his grand fantasy in plain sight. Through industry news and social media, I could see that he had married Chloe Thorne. He had rebranded his architecture firm into an ultra-luxury commercial development company. He purchased a sprawling, historic waterfront estate in Lake Forest. He was constantly photographed in society magazines, standing on yachts, attending polo matches, and drinking vintage champagne with high-profile city officials. To the public, Julian Sterling looked like a billionaire. To anyone with access to institutional financial databases, Julian was walking on tissue paper over an open fire. What Julian did not realize was that Chloe Thorne's wealthy father was not an idiot. Her father had locked Chloe's entire inheritance behind an ironclad, multi-layered discretionary family trust. Julian could not touch a single cent of the principal family fortune. To fund his lavish lifestyle, maintain his waterfront estate, and keep his struggling design firm looking successful, Julian had taken out massive commercial loans, bridging one debt with another at extremely high interest rates. He was running the exact same con he had pulled on me 5 years prior, only this time the numbers had 7 zeros attached to them. 6 months ago, Julian's flagship development project in downtown Chicago stalled completely due to structural engineering failures and severe budget overruns. The primary commercial bank issued a formal notice of default on a $34 million collateralized loan package. Desperate to avoid public embarrassment, Julian signed an aggressive mezzanine debt agreement to keep the project alive, using his primary Lake Forest residence, his corporate bank accounts, and his private vehicle collection as direct collateral. 2 months ago, he defaulted on that mezzanine loan as well. 3 weeks ago, Meridian Sovereign Capital purchased Julian's entire non-performing debt package at a discounted rate. When the thick legal file landed on my desk on a quiet Tuesday morning, I opened it and saw Julian's familiar, arrogant portrait staring back at me. I reviewed the paperwork thoroughly. The default was absolute. The legal grace period had expired. The collateral clauses were completely enforceable under state law. He had cross-collateralized everything he possessed to maintain the illusion of wealth for one more financial quarter. I did not call him. I did not text him. I did not send an angry warning. I simply took my black ink pen, signed the executive foreclosure authorization, and instructed our lead corporate attorney, Marcus Hayes, to submit the formal writs of attachment to the state court system. The legal seizure order was scheduled to take full administrative effect on the final Thursday of the month, precisely at 8 o'clock in the evening. That Thursday happened to be the night of the annual Hope Vanguard Gala. The Hope Vanguard Gala is the premier black-tie charity event in the city, held inside the marble-lined ballroom of the historic Palmer House. The room was filled with over 400 business leaders, city commissioners, and real estate executives. Meridian Sovereign Capital was a primary corporate underwriter for the event, meaning our firm held Table 1, situated directly in front of the auction stage. I attended the gala wearing a simple high-collared black wool evening gown, a classic mechanical wristwatch, and small diamond studs. My hair was gathered into a neat, understated chignon. I looked like an ordinary, composed professional reviewing files on a leather-bound tablet. Around 8 o'clock, the main doors opened and Julian walked in with Chloe Thorne on his arm. He looked entirely manufactured. He wore a custom midnight blue velvet tuxedo, patent leather shoes, and a massive gold watch that caught the light with every movement of his wrist. He walked through the room with theatrical confidence, greeting investors, shaking hands with politicians, and pretending to be the most powerful man in the room. Around 8:15, the centerpiece of the evening was brought onto the stage, an antique Art Deco platinum and blue sapphire necklace, appraised at over $3 million. The bidding moved quickly. $2 million, $2.5 million, $3 million. Suddenly, Julian stood up from his table in the middle of the ballroom. He straightened his velvet jacket, looked around the room to make sure every camera and every eye was on him, raised his gold auction paddle high into the air, and shouted out with booming confidence, $4 million. The entire ballroom fell completely silent. People gasped. Whispers rippled across the room. Chloe looked at him with an expression of sharp alarm, but Julian leaned back with a triumphant, arrogant smirk. He loved every second of the spectacle. The auctioneer slammed the wooden gavel down hard. Sold for $4 million to Mr. Julian Sterling. A wave of applause filled the ballroom as Julian raised his champagne glass to the crowd like a king accepting homage. 10 minutes later, during the dessert course, the auction director walked over to Julian's table with a mobile credit terminal to secure the mandatory 10% earnest deposit of $400,000. Julian smoothly reached into his breast pocket and produced a sleek, titanium corporate credit card. The director swiped the card. She paused, frowned, looked at the small screen and swiped it a second time. Julian's smile tightened slightly. "Is there a network delay on your device?" he asked in a loud, dismissive voice. "That is an unlimited commercial black card." "I am very sorry, Mr. Sterling," the director replied politely, keeping her voice low. "The transaction is returning a code 99. It is a hard administrative hold from the Central Issuing Clearinghouse. The entire line is frozen." Julian's face went red with irritation. He pulled out a gold personal card. "Try this one immediately." The director swiped it. The screen instantly flashed red. "Account blocked by court order." "This is completely unacceptable," Julian snapped loudly, drawing the attention of several nearby tables. "Your machine is clearly broken. Do you have any idea who I am?" "I run Sterling Urban Development." "Who is managing the financial verification desk for this event?" "Mr. Sterling," the auction director said calmly. "All financial clearances and security authorizations for tonight's auction are being handled directly by our primary underwriter at Table 1. We can walk over there right now to clear up any discrepancies." "Good," Julian sneered, buttoning his jacket. "Let us go talk to whoever is running this amateur operation." I remained seated at Table 1, quietly taking notes on my tablet as Julian marched toward my table with heavy, furious steps, followed by the auction director and 2 private security guards. "Listen to me very carefully," Julian demanded, slamming his open palm against the white linen of my table. "Your payment system is throwing false error codes on my primary accounts. I demand that you manually override the system right now and—" He stopped speaking completely. The air seemed to vanish from his lungs. The color drained from his face until he looked as pale as marble. His eyes slowly traveled from my face down to the clean silver name badge pinned to the lapel of my jacket. Clara Vance, Managing Director, Distressed Asset Recovery, Meridian Sovereign Capital. For 10 seconds, Julian could not breathe. He stared at me in total, paralyzing shock. Then his eyes dropped to my simple black dress and my unadorned hands. The old, ugly arrogance that had driven him his entire life surfaced once again. He let out a harsh, patronizing laugh. "Clara," he said, shaking his head with a smirk of pure contempt. "You are working the registration and verification desk at a charity gala? I see nothing has changed. You are still sitting in the corner doing clerical chores in a bargain rack dress, while real men like me are building this city." He turned to the auction director and sighed dramatically. "Look, this woman used to do administrative paperwork for me years ago. She clearly entered the wrong merchant code into your terminal. Get a real supervisor over here to fix this nonsense." The auction director looked stunned. My lead attorney, Marcus Hayes, started to stand up, but I calmly placed 2 fingers on his arm to signal him to stay seated. I set my heavy fountain pen down onto the table with a soft, deliberate click. "Julian," I said, my voice completely smooth, calm, and carrying cleanly across the surrounding area. "You have not changed at all. You are still performing for people who do not care about you, using money you do not have." Julian's eyes narrowed into a glare. "Watch yourself, Clara. I just placed a $4 million bid in front of the most powerful people in this state. You are a desk clerk." "I am the managing director of Meridian Sovereign Capital," I answered evenly. "And there is no clerical error in the system." I turned my tablet screen around and pushed it smoothly across the table until it rested right beneath his trembling hands. "At precisely 8 o'clock tonight, 20 minutes before you raised your hand to bid on that necklace, our legal team completed the formal execution of the Illinois First District Court writ of attachment against Sterling Urban Development." Julian blinked rapidly, staring down at the legal seals and account numbers displayed on the bright screen. What are you talking about?" "6 months ago, you defaulted on your $34 million commercial loan," I continued, reciting the exact financial data from memory. 2 months ago, you defaulted on your secondary mezzanine financing. Meridian Sovereign Capital purchased that entire defaulted portfolio last month." Julian's hands began to shake violently. "Because you cross-collateralized your business debts with your personal assets," I said, pointing directly to the court order. "Our firm has initiated a full administrative freeze. As of 8 o'clock tonight, your commercial operating accounts are frozen. The legal title to your Lake Forest mansion has been placed into court-ordered receivership. The locks on your corporate office building on Michigan Avenue have been changed by the county sheriff. And every single personal credit line in your name has been terminated for insolvency." I looked straight into his bloodshot, terrified eyes. "You do not have $400,000 for an earnest deposit tonight, Julian. You do not have $40 for the valet parking outside. As of 35 minutes ago, you are legally and completely bankrupt." The silence around our table was absolute. Several prominent real estate developers and city officials who had been sitting nearby had stopped their conversations entirely, watching the exchange in complete disbelief. Chloe Thorne pushed her way through the small crowd, having heard the entire conversation. "Julian," she demanded, her voice cutting through the room with cold fury. "What is she saying? Did you cross-collateralize our Lake Forest home? My father told me you were lying about your development numbers." "Chloe, be quiet, let me fix this." Julian panicked, sweat pouring down his temples and ruining his expensive styling. He dropped his hands onto my table, leaning forward, completely abandoning every trace of his pride. His voice cracked into a frantic, desperate whisper. "Clara, please," he pleaded, tears welling in his eyes. "You cannot do this to me here. You are ruining my life in front of the entire city. We loved each other once. You know how hard I worked to build this reputation. If the press gets hold of this tonight, every contract I have will collapse by tomorrow morning." You built your entire reputation on counterfeit credit and other people's sacrifices, I told him, looking at him with neither anger nor pity. 5 years ago you walked out of our home, left a note calling me ordinary, and dumped $320,000 of vendor debt onto my shoulders. You did not care if I ended up on the street. You did not care if my life was destroyed. I will pay you back. Julian sobbed, completely unaware of how many cameras and guests were watching him unravel. I will wire you every dollar plus interest. Just lift the administrative hold on my card for 2 hours. Just let me finish the payment on this auction so I don't get humiliated, Clara, please. I am begging you on my knees. I do not need your money, Julian, I said quietly, the finality in my words echoing like stone hitting stone. I already seized it legally. I turned my eyes back to the auction director. Director Collins, the bidder has failed the mandatory financial solvency verification. Please reopen the lot to the secondary bidder. Immediately, Ms. Vance, the director answered crisply. She signaled the security personnel waiting behind Julian. Please remove Mr. Sterling from the ballroom immediately. His credentials are revoked. Get your hands off me. Julian screamed as 2 large security guards firmly took hold of his arms. Clara, look at me. You can't do this to me. Chloe Thorne did not say another word to him. She pulled her emerald coat over her shoulders, looked at Julian with pure disgust and said, My father's legal team will serve your divorce papers tomorrow morning. Do not ever contact me again. She turned around and walked out of the VIP exit, leaving Julian completely alone. The entire ballroom watched in stunned silence as Julian Sterling, the man who had spent his entire adult life pretending to be a giant among men, was physically escorted down the long red-carpeted aisle, weeping openly in front of the very high society he had betrayed everyone to impress. When the heavy oak doors shut behind him, the room was quiet for a brief moment before the auctioneer cleared his throat, returned to the podium and resumed the evening. I picked up my pen, closed my leather notebook and took a slow sip of water. For 5 years, I had carried the cold memory of that tiny apartment above the laundromat. I had remembered the fear of answering the phone and the shame of counting change to buy bread. In that single moment, watching those grand ballroom doors close, every trace of that old weight lifted from my chest forever. Real strength is never about how loud you talk, how expensive your clothes are, or how many people you can impress in a room. Real strength is built in the quiet hours when nobody is looking, through discipline, patience, and unwavering resolve. When you build your life on genuine work, you never have to fear the day the truth comes knocking. Thank you for listening. If this story reminded you that real justice takes time, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories, and tell me in the comments, what is the most satisfying moment of karma you have ever witnessed in real life? Take care, and I will see you in the next one.